and welcome to the Fantasy Live Show, Week 15 game-by-game recap edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, assuming that your playoff matchups went okay. But you know what? If they didn't, 364 more days to get ready for next year, and you might as well start now with myself and the one, the only Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Mr. Dwain, I hope you enjoyed your Sunday.
Yeah, man. If your playoffs have been dashed and you're still watching and listening to this show, we really love you guys. We love all of you, period. But man, if you're coming back around, even though you got a team eliminated, we appreciate you guys.
My biggest just advice, Dwain, would be join more and more leagues. So eventually, just by random chance, you hopefully win one,
Yeah, there is some chance involved with fantasy football. I don't know if people know that there is this little thing called luck, and it does play an important role. So yes, playing in more leagues is a good thing, Ian. I would agree with that.
Shut up, Dwain. People are supposed to think that we have 100% of the answers 100% of the time. Okay. But guys, as always, going through all the utilization, the injury fallout, and of course, just touching on some good plays along the way here on the Fantasy Live Show. Winding back the clocks, though, to Thursday, we had the Falcons take down the Buccaneers 29-28, winning outright as 6-point dogs. Overdid cash at 43.5. The Kyle Pitts game, Dwain, 166 yards and 3 touchdowns, 45.6 PPR points. This was the fifth best game by a tight end ever, best since Shannon Sharp, I believe, in 1996. So truly was historically incredible. And if you did have the, balls to start Kyle Pitts, you likely won your fantasy matchup.
Hey man, we're in the shootout over on Real Time Sports, and a lot of people, I was looking at the leaderboard, Ian, they did have the guts to start Kyle Pitts. So yeah, they came up with those 45.6 PPR points. We do appreciate you, Trey McBride. We'll talk more about you later, but you nearly offset it. You did your part. You did your part for sure. But Pitts, yeah, scoring almost 46 fantasy points in a PPR league over his last 4 games without Drake London. Ian, 20.1 fantasy points per game, over 15 points in 3 of the 4 contests. He has a 97 utilization score, a 29% target share with 8.5 targets per game and 0.5 end zone targets per game and 74 air yards per game. So if we get another game without Drake London, I think it's pretty safe to say Kyle Pitts is going to be in the top 4. Actually, maybe. Yeah, he'll be in the top 4 for sure. Because I know we'll talk about the Chiefs more later, but he's for sure ahead of Kelsey at this point. It's him and Fannin.
Falcons versus the Cardinals next week, so we might just get a showdown between the 2 most productive tight ends here of recent memory. Also, shout out to Bijan Robinson, 93 yards on the ground, also scored a touchdown, 82 receiving yards. Guys, now has 91 tackles avoided this season. When I looked earlier, nobody else was even in the 70s yet. So really, when it looks like Bijan is the most elusive dude in the NFL, that's probably because he is. Dwain, I would like to think we'll get Drake London back next week, given that they have the extra couple days of rest. Any interest in David Sills if he is remaining sidelined?
David Sills the 5th, Ian. Just make sure you have that 5th on there. It's a long lineage of David Sills. He's the only wide receiver to make it to the NFL, though, so props to him. He is the wide receiver, too, for the Falcons right now, man. 8.2 fantasy points this week, 89% routes, 18% target share. Darnell Mooney's not been doing much. You would have to be in an absolute sicko league. You would need to be in Ian's 32-team league, which is down to 16. How many do you guys cut that down to, Ian?
I don't know, Dwain. Some of us maybe aren't. Some of us maybe aren't.
I'm sorry.
We're a little bit sour about it. It's all good.
I didn't mean to bring that up. Then my bad. No, not really much interest, but he is the wide receiver too, for whatever purposes that may serve for you guys. Yes, David Sills.
Dude, I was trying to adjust my roster this week, and I got the notey that was like, you've already made 6 ad drops this week. You can't do anymore. And I was like, Jesus, I got to get a freaking life out here. So probably better for the whole Hartitz family that the 32-team league is done for another season. But again, kudos to the Falcons. 373 and 3 touchdowns from Kirk Cousins. Did not know he still had that in him. Maybe it is just, again, when they happen to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were headlines winning by
386 per game against the Bucs in the last 3 games over the last 2 years. Kirk Cousins against the rest of the NFL, 225 yards per game. So yeah, Cousins definitely likes to play the Bucs secondary.
Hey, 3rd and 28, managed to convert 2 downs later. Pretty special stuff there. Obviously, a very unfortunate game for the Buccaneers, but we did see the return of Mike Evans. Caught 6 of 12 targets for 132 yards. Dwain needs to average 243 yards per game to get to 1,000. I don't exactly think that's going to happen, but it was good to see the good version of Baker Mayfield again with 8.1 yards per attempt. That was the first time he reached even 7 since week 6. What did we see from the wide receiver room with the return of Evans?
So Evans had a 70% route participation. They did tell us they were going to ease him back in. So my guess is that'll be closer to 80 to 85% moving forward, Ian, but still led the team with a 36% target share. He had 10 targets on the day, including an end zone target. 176 air yards, gave you 19.2 fantasy points, had an 88 utilization score. So Evans doing Evans things. Chris Godwin led the team in routes, Ian. We didn't see that coming. Evans returns, and Chris Godwin posts a 95% route participation rate, scored 12 fantasy points for you. He only had a 14% target share, but one of those was in the end zone, which he did catch. That helped you guys out. Mostly worked underneath. And then Igbuka was the guy that really took the big impact here, Ian. Route participation rate low of the season at 63%, because we also had Jalen McMillan back, who had a 50% route participation rate. So Igbuka still had his targets, 25% target share, second on the team. He had 7 on the day, 103 air yards, 14.7 average depth of target. So like still getting targets and looks, but if he's going to be in a rotation where now like we're in jeopardy of being below 70% route participation, not necessarily ideal. Jalen McMillan, like only a stash play in deeper leagues, guys. Like he's not going to have a full-time role. He doesn't have a path to one, but it was nice to see him back on the field making that big catch down the field, which was very close to a touchdown, and that ended up being a Sean Tucker touchdown.
He is one of the rare wide receiver fours, though, where when anyone in front of him gets hurt, like he actually does carry some immediate fantasy relevance. So good to see McMillan back on the field. Obviously, had to go through quite a bit stemming from that August neck injury. You mentioned Igbuka now just has one top 30 performance in his last 9 games. That is a yikes for me. Also a yikes, Dwain, was Bucky Irving, just 71 scoreless yards. Unfortunate event for fantasy managers. Have to look at that in their starting lineup all weekend. We did see Sean Tucker vulture the goal line touchdown. Is there enough concern for you with Tucker and obviously Rachaad White just being involved where, no, we're not benching Bucky Irving, but that just kind of keeps him closer to RB12 versus RB1?
Yeah, 3 games back, he's averaged 13.4 fantasy points. Bucky Irving, 53% of the snaps, 63% of the rushing attempts, so he's getting 15.3 carries per game, but he's got 0% of the carries inside the 5. He's got a very low snap rate inside the 5. That work is almost all going to Sean Tucker. Actually, 100% of the carries inside the 5 since the return of Bucky Irving have gone to Sean Tucker. So that seems to be the way that they've decided to reward Sean Tucker for playing well while Bucky Irving was out. Can't necessarily even blame him, man. Sean Tucker's been a good player this year. I know it sucks for you guys that have Bucky Irving on your roster, but it's like one of these things where, Sean Tucker, not too bad of a player. So yeah, I would agree that more of a borderline running back 1 for Bucky Irving, because the passing down work in the 2-minute offense goes to Rachaad White. So essentially Bucky Irving is a between the 20s back or a between the 10s back right now. He obviously can break off big plays. He's still good in the passing game. But it's not the role that we saw early in the year where it was like, oh my goodness, this is like all going through Bucky Irving.
Buccaneers do have an NFC South showdown, if you can call it that, against the Panthers coming next week. So maybe then we see them truly unleash Bucky with a true every down role. Moving on to Sunday, we had the Ravens take down the Bengals 24-0. Baltimore obviously covering as 3-point faves. The under did cash at 51.5. So it was 17-0 Ravens early in the third, and they largely just were able to coast from there. So good stuff from Lamar Jackson, though, Dwain. 150 yards and a pair of touchdowns through the air. Also chipped in 26 rushing yards, and just for the second straight week, looked fast out there. And also, again, the arm strength was certainly on display. That was a beautiful touchdown to Zay Flowers before halftime. Also saw Derrick Henry hit 100 rushing yards. Would have been cooler if he scored, but life isn't fair. Zay Flowers did finally find the end zone. Mentioned that before. First time since the third quarter of week 1. Would have been cooler if he didn't drop a touchdown later and also drop another pass, which actually led directly to Lamar's INT. But again, beggars can't be choosers. Obviously, unfortunate they though, Dwain, for the tight ends. Coming into this game against the Bengals, opponents were averaging 97 yards per game just from their tight ends. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely today combined for 18. Did we see Likely phased out, man, or is it just, unfortunate?
No, both of them played 56% routes for Andrews, 61% routes for Likely. Obviously, Likely had 0 fantasy points for you today. 25% target share for Andrews, but last week we saw him over a 90% route participation. We were wondering, could that potentially be the beginning of something new? We didn't even have Rashad Bateman available today, but it was not. So still a rotation with these tight ends and an offense that wants to run the ball. Really, that's the identity.
Ravens Patriots next Sunday night, though, so hopefully Drake May brings out more from them. Otherwise, Dwayne, I'm pretty good with the Ravens. Lamar and Henry are pretty good. Hopefully you still have them.
Yep. Nope, we're good. Henry, wish he had the passing down work. He doesn't. We don't need to rehash it.
Yeah, again, he hasn't had that mass eruption, guys, and I know it's annoying, but he has had 100 yards and or literally 2+ touchdowns in 8 of his last 9 games. So not
it was a blowout,
although... Yeah,
it was a blowout win today. So they let Mitchell salt the game away. Mitchell played 100% of the snaps in the fourth quarter. Like if those go to Henry, you're probably a lot happier. Maybe you get a touchdown, but like you said, he's still playing well.
And just kind of a weird second half. Bengals had a really long drive. Then Joe Burrow throws a pick six, and the Bengals had another really long drive. So again, unfortunate a sequence of events there for the Bengals and Lemony Snicket. Unfortunately, their slim playoff hopes have officially been evaporated. But that didn't stop Jamar Chase from catching 10 of 16 targets for 132 yards. Could have been a bigger day. Had a couple drops, one of which led to a Joe Burrow interception. He finished with just 225 scoreless yards. The first time, Dwain, that Joe Burrow has been shut out as a starting quarterback since 2018 against Bama during his first season at LSU. So obviously didn't exactly have that one on our bingo cards. Did we see anyone else really worth a darn in Fantasyland aside from Jamar Chase with no T. Higgins?
The only thing I can say is that they played Gesicki as the wide receiver 3 essentially today. He didn't score fantasy points. He gave you 2.1 points. Be at a 75% route participation. They kicked Yoshivas to the outside and they let Gesicki play the slot. So we'll see what's up with T. Higgins next week, but that would make Gesicki a sleeper tight end again next week if we don't have Higgins.
Noah Fant also got sidelined with an ankle injury. So again, if you're having kind of the two-pronged injuries going there, certainly good news for Gesicki. Was Mitchell Tinsley, just as again one last knife into my 32-team league, Dwain, is Mitchell Tinsley a non-factor right now?
47% routes. He had a 6% target share. So look, I mean, he's a young player that's made some plays when he's had chances. He just didn't have the playing time today.
Chase Brown continuing to lose some work to Samaje Perine, but as we've seen, still finding a way to rack up plenty of touches. It was good to see the 7 receptions for 37 yards today. So we'll see again what the Bengals want to do with Burrow, with Higgins the rest of the way. I would think that Burrow at least is going to continue playing out the season. We'll see with Higgins. They are going to be in Miami here in week 16. Moving on, Dwain, another shutout. The Eagles blanked the Raiders 31-0. Philly covering with ease as a 12.5 point fade. The under did cash at 37.5. The Eagles basically got A.J. Brown his touchdown to open up the fourth quarter, went up 31-0. And then had a ridiculous 12-minute drive full of Tank Bigsby runs to ice away the game. So good stuff from the Eagles. This was their second best team performance of the season in terms of offensive EPA per play. Jalen Hurts, 175 yards and a trio of scores. Mentioned the one to AJB. Also 2 to Dallas Goedert. If you can call them passing touchdowns because they were both shovel passes, Goddard actually did drop a third touchdown from inside the 5-yard line. It seems like when they get close, either going to be Hurts or Dallas Goedert. I guess they did save enough for at least Saquon Barkley to find the end zone once. So, Dwain, I think it was kind of business as usual. There were no real busts in this game from the Eagles. Devontae Smith, 50 yards, but just good to see this offense looking like a really good offense like we know they can be.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add other than if you start looking at snap shares and stuff for this game, guys, just realize that in the fourth quarter, the backups were playing for the Eagles. So that's why everything's going to look a little bit low. Like Barkley, for example, ahead of the fourth quarter when he didn't play any, had 75% of the snaps. You throw the fourth quarter in, it drops down to under 60%. So any data you're looking at for the Eagles this week about route participation rate, snaps, anything like that, just remember that the fourth quarter was all backups.
Contrary to popular belief, Tank Bigsby is not coming for Saquon Barkley's starting job. So Eagles are going to be in Washington on Saturday afternoon in week 16. We actually got 2 Saturday games going on there. Get your popcorn ready for those. Meanwhile, with the Raiders, 1.8 yards per play. That is the second worst single game mark of the season, ahead of only that disastrous Jets-Broncos game in England that I'm sure many of you rightfully blocked out of your mind. So Kenny Pickett, Dwain, 64 yards on 25 attempts. Didn't attempt to pass 20 plus yards downfield. They play the Houston Texans next week, assuming the government's going to let this game actually go ahead and be played just out of safety precautions. I mean, we've been trying to give Ashton Genty and even Brock Bowers the benefit of the doubt. If we still have Kenny Pickett, Dwain, how far can we drop these guys?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, Genty we've had around mid-range running back 2 with some tough matchups recently, and this was one of them. So if you're going to be playing the Texans and if Kenny Pickett's under center, honestly, you just have to treat him like Woody Marks or Devin Neal, these other guys. It's not like we shove these guys into mid-range running back 2. We've been giving Genty a little bit of a benefit of the doubt due to his talent profile. But yeah, if we have Kenny Pickett, these guys all downgrade. I will say that the offensive coordinator, Greg Olson, is not unlocking Brock Bowers, but he is playing him every snap almost. 97% route participation rate today. So I think in all 3 games, he's been at 94% or higher under Olson. So 28% target share. But when Kenny Pickett does what he did, it only turns into 8.8 fantasy points today.
Didn't attempt a single pass at least 20 yards downfield. That is absolutely sad. So yeah, I would not be surprised if we see, maybe for the first time in my lifetime, Dwain, a team implied for under 10 points here again when the Raiders take on the Texans next week. Speaking of those Texans, they beat down the Cardinals 40-20, covering with these as 10.5 point faves. The over cashed at 42. This one was 17-0 Texans by the end of the first quarter, and I believe the Cardinals only had 1 possession by that point because they flubbed a kick return or something like that. So again, really wasn't close throughout the game, thanks in large part to the excellence from CJ Stroud and company, 260 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, 2 of which went to Nico Collins. He is now the wide receiver 9 on the season per game for those counting at home. Also got to give some love to my mortal enemy, Dalton Schultz, who had 76 yards and a touchdown on a whopping 9 targets as well. That said, Dwayne, it seems like the really big fantasy ramification here is Woody Marks apparently having an injury. He was going early. He had a kind of weird touchdown where it went between CJ Stroud's legs. I really don't think it was planned, but Woody found his way into the end zone. Seems like an ankle injury, and we instead got a lot of Jahar Jordan the rest of the way.
Yeah, Woody was injured on the 4th drive of the game. So after that, it was Jawar Jordan with 54% of the snaps, 72% of the rushing attempts, 35% route participation rate. So Agambawale was handling the passing down stuff. But you have to remember, guys, that Nick Chubb was also out with the rib injury. So this is one we'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens with Woody Marks's injury. He was probably about to have a pretty big day here. I mean, Jordan scored 13.8 PPR points, and Marks already had 10.8 over the first 4 drives. So we were probably finally going to get that 22, 25 point performance out of Mark. So sucks that happens in the fantasy playoffs. We'll just have to monitor the injuries. But if we don't have Marks or Chubb, then I would assume that right now we would be projecting Jawar Jordan as the RB1 for the Texans next week.
Jawar Jordan, league winner. I would say crazier things have never happened, but they kind of have, guys. Again,
last year.
Yeah, we talked about that. Literally Amir Abdullah, and we got the Texans facing the Raiders next week. So time is a flat circle sometimes with that. So again, keep an eye on it. Nick Chubb was a limited participant in Friday's practice, so it doesn't seem like it's guaranteed to be a multi-week injury. But again, we'll know more throughout the week. Unfortunate dud for Jaden Higgins, though, caught his only target for just 4 scoreless yards. So really, Dwayne, it's Nico Collins, whatever running back we figure out, and Dalton Schultz knocking on that tight end 1 door. Sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Meanwhile, with those Arizona Cardinals, it was not pretty early, but that has never stopped Jacoby Brissett from getting numbers eventually. 249 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Now the QB4 in fantasy points per game since week 6. Of course, he found his 2 BFFs to get the majority of those yards. Trey McBride caught 12 of 13 targets for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's up to 10 on the season, nearly averaging 5 full extra PPR points ahead of the tight end 2, that being Brock Bowers. Lily freaking loves that. Michael Wilson, 54 yards and a touchdown as well. Again, Dwayne, wasn't easy, but I think what you kind of spelled out came to fruition here. Okay, it wasn't great for Michael Wilson. Still found his way to 16 PPR points.
Yeah, I mean, so basically what we talked about on the show happened. I think 30 to 40% of his targets got taken away, and they held him to below a 50% catch rate, 46% today, and he still came up with 16.4 fantasy points. So look, man, when you're getting the volume that he's getting, he had 2 end zone targets in this game as well. One of them obviously resulted in a touchdown. You're going to do good things when you're playing this well. And Jacoby Brissett, man, 20.6 PPR points. And I realized a lot of it was in trash time, but it's like you said, he just always finds a way to get going.
So we had him down in that kind of mid-tier QB2 range ahead of this very tough matchup. Obviously overcame that. We got the Falcons and the Bengals over the course of these next 2 weeks, Dwayne. I think Jacoby's could be in our top 10 the rest of the way.
Yep, I agree.
Feeling good there. What do we see from the running backs? Obviously, Emari DeMercado was back, but Bam Knight also got injured early with an ankle.
Yeah, Bam Knight got injured on his first attempt. So he only played 1 snap in the game, and it was all Michael Carter, man. 79% of the snaps, 70% of the rushing attempts with 14 totes. He had 100% of the snaps inside the 5, 72% route participation rate, 57% of the 2-minute offense. Dude, 11 targets in this game. He had a 29% target share. All that equaled 13.4 PPR points, guys. So basically you've got a low-end running back 2 on your hands. But still, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Bam not ruled out so quickly. My guess is Michael Carter is the running back 1 for the Cardinals the rest of the way. We'll see what happens with DeMercado. He was coming back from his own high ankle sprain in this one, Ian. I was surprised to see his snaps only at 11%, though, with Bam Knight getting injured so early. So my gut says that it'll be a little bit closer split between these 2 guys, but Carter is the guy to have.
Obviously, Trey Benson is completely out of the picture. He was not activated in time. So, yeah, man, I'm with you. I was surprised to see DeMercado that low. He was questionable coming in, was only limited throughout the week. So one of these situations where, again, pay attention to those practice reports. If we see him with no designation, practicing in full, probably a decent sign that he could be a little bit more involved ahead of that matchup against the Falcons. Moving along, we had the Chargers take down the Chiefs 16-13. Chargers winning outright as 5.5-point dogs. Under did cash at 41.5. So, obviously, some terrible news going on with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. We will get get to that shortly. First, though, with those Chargers, an underwhelming offensive performance. Again, only 16 points. That came on the back of a last, before halftime, I should say, drive from Justin Herbert, where he just threw two gorgeous balls, man, to Trey Harris and then Keandre Lambert-Smith for the touchdown. So it was good they got that and they got the win, but otherwise, man, really Oronte Gadsden is the only guy that I would say, came through for you in the box score. And even that, man, just 61 scoreless yards. But with no Quentin Johnson in this one, Dwain, how did we see kind of the route usage change for guys like McConkey, Keenan, and even Oronte Gadsden?
Yeah, it was Trey Harris that stepped into a the wide receiver 2 role with an 82% route participation. He gave us 7.9 PPR points. He had 5 targets, 19% target share, 57 air yards. So he was the wide receiver 2. McConkey was still the wide receiver 1, but didn't give you anything. 4 PPR points. Keenan Allen was a wide receiver 3 with a 57% route participation rate. He led the team with a 27% target share. Oronte Gadsden had a little bit of a bounce back game in with 10.1 fantasy points, but another game below the 80% route participation rate that we saw early in the season. This was actually one of his lowest we've seen since he took over the starting job at 64%. So just a really different offense here for the Chargers with all the offensive line injuries like we've highlighted in the past shows. So all of these guys, obviously, it's just a downgrade because the passing offense is flat itself and Herbert's under pressure a lot. So it's a challenge and they have multiple guys. So if this is suddenly a 200 yard per game offense and through the air instead of 280, like we saw early in the year, it's just a lot harder for all these players to come through for you.
You're not kidding, man. On the season, only the Browns have actually allowed a higher pressure rate now. Herbert himself has taken 27 sacks over the last 6 games. Not great there. This was game 2, though, of Amari and Hampton being back. Dwayne, obviously, a lot of us were surprised to see how involved Kamani Vidal stayed in the first game back. What did we see in Act 2?
Yeah, it was still Kamani Vidal with the lead in the backfield with 63% of the snaps. We did see Hampton actually overtake him for the lead in the rushing attempts, though, Ian, something we had talked about. 54% of the carries went through Hampton, 15 carries on the day, 43% went through Vidal. Vidal kept the passing down work, 100% of the 2-minute offense. He ended up with a 61% route participation rate. So I think we'll continue to see those things get tighter. Maybe Hampton edges out a little bit more in the rushing attempt department, but I don't think Vidal's going away, man. And so that's a challenge. It's going to make it tough to rank Hampton as much more than like a mid-range running back 2.
I know it's unfortunate, man. We got those 6-7 offenses that, again, we like well enough, but we just with the 2-3 running back committees can't really rank either guy inside the top 20. So Chargers do get the Cowboys next week. So maybe that passing game can at least wake up. God forbid. I mean, not God forbid, but as long as I should say they can actually block those Cowboys front 7 defenders for more than a few seconds. Meanwhile, for the Chiefs, eliminated from the playoffs for the first time since 2014, and Patrick Mahomes had to tear his freaking ACL on top of that. So just, man, like the season was already over, and then for this to go down, Dwayne, I'm sure, Mr. McFarland is a very, very sad person right now. We should all be sad, man. Mahomes is the man.
Yeah, she is sad. But hey, it happens. Like we'll see what happens with Mahomes. I mean, it's going to be tight to be ready for the beginning of next season. Like I don't see him playing in preseason games. I mean, they'll be lucky to have him back and ready for week 1. He is a quarterback, so it's not like he has to do some of the things that other ball carriers do, but Mahomes moves around a lot, man, in the pocket. So we'll be following it. Obviously, this is a big downgrade for the offense the rest of the way, man. And it'll be interesting just to see how they handle their star players. Like they unloaded everything today. Like Rashee Rice had a season high 95% route participation rate, 98% to Travis Kelce. So I don't know that those guys will continue to play roles like that. We've seen them closer to like the 80% route participation rate. And Gardner Minshew, I'll say for Minshew, we've at least seen him in the past be a capable guy. So it's not like these players are dead, but Rashee Rice is a guy we're ranking in the top 6 wide receivers every week. We won't be now.
We're still going to be starting Rashee Rice, Dwayne. I have a hard time believing we're going to rank more like in 15 wide receivers ahead of him. But Kelsey's moving down, as you kind of said earlier. I mean, they're at the Titans next week, so it's a winnable enough matchup, man. But outside of Rashee Rice, I have a hard time believing that anyone is going to be in lineups, and we're going to be feeling good about it, especially because it seems like we saw a backfield shift away from Kareem Hunt. Yeah,
Pacheco did take back over the early down work today, Ian. He had 58% of the rushing attempts, 11 carries versus only 32% for Hunt. Hunt kept all the pass, not all, he kept the lead in the passing down work. He had 71% of the 2-minute offense, 53% route participation rate. But these are just 2 guys that you really, especially at this point in the year, like I don't want them anywhere near my lineup at this point.
I like the pregame report. I want to say from Tom Pelissero, where it's just like, yeah, the Chiefs are really adamant they need to add an upgrade to their backfield next year. And it's like, oh, you don't say. Like, really? Wow. Can't believe you came to that. But let's turn those frowns upside down with the Xfinity game of the week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity. Imagine that. The Bills took down the Patriots 35-31, covering as a 2.5-point road favorite, I should say. The overcast here at 49.5. Bills are down 21-0 early, man. It looked like the Patriots were going to go ahead and do their thing. Ultimately, Josh Allen decided to get going, sat up in his chair, and led the comeback. So 193 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. 1 to James Cook, 2 to Dawson Knox. Also chipped in 49 rushing yards. But Dwain, the real star of the day was Mr. James Cook. 3 scores, 2 rushing and 1 receiving, up to 19 PPR points per game, the RB6 on the season. The last 2 seasons, including the playoffs, he has played 33 games and he has 33 touchdowns. So James Cook, Dwain, it's kind of that thing that you were talking about with Achane and also James Cook, where like we go into these seasons and it's important to remember, like, all right, this is what this guy has done on limited usage. And yeah, we worry about that usage still being limited, but God forbid that usage goes up, fireworks could ensue.
Yeah, for sure. 70% snap share today. So last week he was over 70% as well. So it just feels like the Bills are just kind of tightening, their rotation right now with everything on the line and seeding for the playoffs, which, hey, I would too. Like I wouldn't take James Cook off the field ever, like, but he scored 31 fantasy points today, 53% route participation rate. So not quite as high as last week, but over like that 40% range where we saw him hover for like about 5 weeks in a row before last week. So he had the 12% target share, obviously caught the 1 ball down from inside the 5-yard line. That was the touchdown as well. So yeah, James Cook, man, one of the best picks in the 4th round of fantasy football this year. Absolute steal, James Cook.
100% there. Otherwise, Khalil Shakur, 65 yards. I mentioned Dawson Knox having the pair of touchdowns. I'm guessing, Dwain, we didn't see Dalton Kincaid really get back to anything close to a full-time role?
No, I ran these numbers earlier because we were having the show earlier tonight, but 44% route participation whenever I ran everything. So, and I waited till like the middle of the second quarter of the second round of games. So it's probably right. That's what Knox was at as well. So my guess is they were definitely both below the 50%, 25% or 15% target share for both guys. They both had 4 targets today.
Bills are at the Browns next week, but yes, Dalton Kincaid not going to be back into our circle of trust, despite him, again, having a really good season by virtually any efficiency metric you want to look at there. So we'll know Brandon Cooks seemed like they were trying to get him going early. He actually had quite a few unrealized air yards, but he did also drop a 30-yard gain on the first play of the game. So maybe not going to lead to bigger and better opportunities down the road. Next up, we do have the Patriots, again, being led by Travion Henderson, Dwain, someone who, again, was balling out. Then Ramondre Stevenson came back, had us all worried about what kind of role we were going to see. Sure seemed like Ramondre was still being leaned on, honestly, as someone who, again, has Travion on way too many fantasy teams. I would say not enough today. That was awesome. But again, Ramondre got to start and he looked good out there, man. Had 6 carries for 50 yards, but guess who looked better? Mr. Travion Henderson had a pair of long super touchdowns. Drake May throwing a 50-yard block, I should say 50 yards downfield on one of them was great to see. But so, Dwain, what was the overall usage between Henderson and Ramondre? Back in the right direction for the rookie?
Yeah, I mean, it was still a lead for Stevenson, like overall, 67%
Really?
of the snaps versus 50% for Hendo. But Hendo had 64% of the rushing attempts, so 14 carries versus only 6 for Stevenson today. The way Stevenson ended up out-snapping him is he had 100% of the 2-minute offense, 69% route participation,
Nice.
only 31% for Hendo. So Stevenson, it's hard to say what this backfield is going to do each week, but I think the bottom line is we just know with Hendo he's capable of the big plays. So, like, we're keeping him in that mid-range running back 2 range, but he's obviously capable of giving you a smash high end running back 1 season, and it'll be super interesting to see if they manage to give him a little bit more down the stretch. I don't know, like. The Bills seem to be doing that with James Cook. You think maybe the Patriots would do it, but we're not good at predicting Mike Vrabel.
Weeks 1 through 7, guys, just 6.7 PPR points per game for Henderson. That was good for the RB 47 in fantasy. But since week 8, 18.8 PPR points per game, good for the 6th highest amount. Dwain and I are very hopeful our families will see these stats and eventually decide to come home. So good stuff there from Travion. Unfortunately, that was really about it, man. Again, Drake May ran for a couple touchdowns early. I should say that's awesome, but only 155 passing yards on the day. Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry, just 26 and 18 scoreless yards. Kayshon Boutte made an awesome catch down down the sideline. Maybe it wasn't a catch upon further review, but they ruled it a catch. His only target of the game. So just unfortunate, Dwayne. I know you've been annoyed kind of with the rotations throughout the season at wide receiver and tight end. I mean, ahead of next Sunday night where they're going to take on the Ravens, like any of these wide receivers or tight ends you think we can be confident about?
No, I don't think so. Just a massive rotation still. Hollins and Booty are the two guys getting the most routes. Diggs in a game where they really needed him in, only a 55% route participation in a revenge game. Like that's really what's confusing to me is like you would just think, okay, now you've got the Bills coming back against you. You get down in the game. I just feel like that would be the occasion where you'd be like, all right, Diggs, like just play every down. We just want you out there every down, but they're not doing that.
And dude, like I know sometimes you've been annoyed with like Arthur Smith and Drake London playing them 75-80% instead of not 90-95%. I feel like that's a little ticky-tack. 55%? What are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. No, 75-95 isn't ticky-tack because like you can't be a wide receiver one on a 75, which is what we want for Drake London. But no, 55 is like I don't understand. Especially like Mac Hollins. Look, I know we mess around and, you know, his bit with his shoes, you know, not wearing shoes and all that. And he's a good blocker. Coaches seem to like him. But, man, having him on the field more often than Diggs, how do you think the defensive coordinator for the Bills felt when you made that move? I guarantee you they were saying thank you. We appreciate your service today of Josh McDaniels. We appreciate you not putting Stephon Diggs on the field more.
100% with you, man. So again, great win from the Bills. We'll see what happens in this very competitive AFC East here moving forward. But yes, guys, this has been our Xfinity Game of the Week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity, imagine that. Next up, we got the beatdown from the Jaguars over the Jets, 48-20. Jacksonville covering that 14-point spread with ease. The over cash of 40.5. This one was 31-10. Jags at the half. Thanks in large part to Trevor Lawrence continuing to play some of the best football of his career. Now, the schedule does play a little bit of part here, guys. Okay. He went awesome in the second half of that Cardinals game. Since then, he's beat the Titans, then he's beat the Colts, and then he's beat the Jets. So with that in mind, look, he's also had an easy schedule. Drake May, and he's also being considered rightfully, I would say, one of the top MVP candidates in the league. So I think anyone with two eyes that has watched Trevor Lawrence over the last few weeks can see some of the great throws he has put on film. Had another ridiculous throw deep. I think he hit who was it today? He was rolling out to his left again, but hit Tim Patrick last week, and then I think hit Jacoby or someone this week. So again, great stuff from T-Law. 5 touchdowns through the air on top of 330 yards. Also chipped in 51 yards and a rushing score, Dwayne. So apparently, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, Liam Cohen just told him to let it rip, and he's letting it rip.
Yeah, I mean, they've just found balance in their offense, like the way they're leaning into their run game. Just since coming out of the bye and then integrating Jacoby Myers into their offense, they just seem to be a much more diverse group now, Ian. So yeah, playing a lot better. So Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be very interesting, like at the top of some of these, leaderboards, for some of these contests we're in. You guys, a lot of you playing in the Fantasy Life Championship. We're glad you jumped into that. We've actually got the Alex P. Keaton is in the chat with us, Ian. He's sitting number 2 right now, the number 2 team. He scored 219 points today. So yeah, sitting at 352 is his total. We got 2 more weeks to go in this race, but yeah, had an absolutely big game. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with these things because man, there's some really big leads for some of these teams. But I mean, these teams have Trevor Lawrence scoring 45 points. They've got, Kyle Pitts on their teams. And I'm not saying those guys won't continue to go off, but I would be kind of surprised, right, to see those 2 guys like potentially carry teams to championships. But hey, maybe it happens.
Especially next week, Jaguars are going to be in Denver facing on the Broncos. So we really will find out again just how real this transformation has been for T-Law and company. But for now, again, great stuff. Did find Brian Thomas Jr. for a touchdown, 66 yards as well, despite having 2 drops. And Jacoby Myers had another efficient day, catching 5 of 7 targets for 71 yards. However, the other big star was Travis Etienne, not on the ground, just 32 rushing yards, but caught all 3 of his targets for 73 yards and not 1, not 2, but 3 scores as well. Now the RB11 on this season in PPR points per game, not too shabby for someone you could draft with an ADP as the RB37. So, Dwayne, it seemed like Bashal Tootin was out fairly early with that finger injury, so we'll see what happens there. But whether he's in or out, man, it's ETN RB1 season at this point.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the Tootin injury, it was ETN, 65% of the snaps, 80% of the rushing attempts, 38% route participation. I think it was the 4th drive when Tootin got hurt, so it was fairly early in the game. But ETN now over the last 6 games, averaging 18.9 fantasy points per game, 59% of the snaps, 58% of the rushing attempts, below 50% of the route participation rate, but essentially like James Cook, Like he's like the poor version of James Cook right now. And today he wasn't the poor version. He actually outscored James Cook, who scored 31 fantasy points. ETN gave you 31.5. So yeah, I think you've got a low end running back one the rest of the way, and we'll see what happens with Tootin's finger. But if he misses any time, just like we talked about last week when ETN had to take over the workload because Tootin fumbled twice, yeah, I mean, we talked about it on the projection show. He would project as a top 6 back. Like if we thought he was going to get the full backfield, we just know that he's not. So either way, though, yeah, low end running back one.
Tootin did catch a touchdown before he hurt his finger. Very nice play design there by Liam Cohen. Nice little play action leaked out into a wheel. So only real dud to speak of was Brenton Strange. Caught only 1 of 3 targets for 26 scoreless yards. Again, good, solid player, but with so many mouths to feed. And this suddenly high-flying Jaguars attack, just tough to, again, get him fully in that tight end circle of trust. Over there for the Jets, shout out A.D. Mitchell, even with Brady Cook under center, caught 6 of 9 targets for 58 yards and a touchdown. Unfortunately, that was it, Dwayne. We have Breece Hall having a second straight game with under 50 yards and without a score. And just, again, we'll see if Garrett Wilson comes back. We got all week to talk about the injury. It doesn't exactly seem imminent. It's an easy enough, or I should say winnable enough matchup. Nothing's really easy for this Jets offense, let's face it. Next week, they face the New Orleans Saints. So I would say, just based on my just immediate reactions, Dwayne, Breece Hall does not deserve the benefit of the doubt in tougher, kind of top 20-ish RB start-sit decisions. And then A.D. Mitchell, I do think kind of gets back into that wide receiver 3 borderline conversation now that we are seeing him capable of still putting up numbers with Cook under center.
Yeah, I mean, look, we would rather have Tyrod Taylor under center, but it's nice to see A.D. Mitchell give you 17.4 fantasy points today, 28% target share, 9 on the day, led the team ahead of Isaiah Williams, who came in second with 7, and then John Mechie had 5 targets today. It was Mechie as the odd man out. He only had a 63% route participation rate today, so that's definitely not good if Garrett Wilson comes back next week. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Wilson, but I agree. Like I had Hall as a low end running back 2 this week. That's probably where I'll have him next week. It's just hard with no one on bye, Ian. Like we'll have some shakeups with some injuries to quarterbacks and things like that. But I still think A.D. Mitchell, as much as I like him, and we've talked about him a lot, probably still a boom bust wide receiver 4, but maybe he sneaks into wide receiver 3 territory. It was nice to see Brady Cook at least throw for 176 yards. We didn't know if he could do that or not.
Yeah, and just the thing with Breece Hall, like Dwayne, when we did our ranking show, I mean, I asked you, like, where's kind of the line where you just start to not feel as good? And I think it was what, RB15, RB16?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the state of the position, even with no buys. But moving along, guys, NFC East battle. We had the Commanders take down the Giants 29-21. Washington winning outright as 2.5-point dogs. They overdid cash here at 46.5. Good game from Marcus Mariota, 211 yards passing and a touchdown. Also chipped in 43 rushing yards. So maybe didn't completely boom, but hopefully you have better quarterback options anyway. The real star, Dwayne, I think we can call him it again. Bill Krosky Merritt got the nickname back, 96 rushing yards and a score. First time since week 5, guys, that he had a touchdown or 70 total yards in a game. So it really was a crappy stretch. But it turns out if you remove Chris Rodriguez from the equation, Bill can still do Bill things.
Yeah, he had 62% of the rushing attempts today. He had 18 carries, 55% of the snaps. It was Jeremy McNichols still getting more of the passing down work, guys. 54% route participation rate versus 31% for Bill. But Bill did come through with the 15.6 fantasy points for you today. Also efficient again, Ian. 96 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. Obviously got the touchdown. So yeah, I think Bill he'll be in that low end running back 2 range if we don't have Chris Rodriguez again next week. I don't think I trust him enough to move him into the circle of trust, but he's going to be in there with a group of guys where we know that there's going to be some nice volume.
Commanders got the Eagles next Saturday afternoon. So again, if Jalen Carter is going to remain sidelined, it's not as bad of a matchup as you would think. Then again, we did just see them blanket the Raiders, but I would put the Commanders on another level ahead of that sad excuse for a professional offense that they have down there in Las Vegas. Otherwise, Terry McLaurin caught 3 or 4 targets for a very nice 69 yards and a score. Now has 3 touchdowns in 4 games since returning. He will remain as a top 20 wide receiver option. Dwayne, last question I have was, did we see any sort of emergence at tight end with Zach Ertz done for the season?
50% route participation to John Bates, and he had 1 target on the day, and then Ben Sinnott had 39%. So no. And then we also had a guy, Colson Yankoff. What a last name, Yankoff. This guy had a 23% route participation rate. He did not earn a target though. So yeah, it's kind of a mess. Three tight ends rotating.
It's not often I hear a last name where I'm like, that dude probably got made more fun
Oh,
of than I
dude.
did in high school, but I
Yes.
think Yankoff probably is one of them. So sincerest of apologies to Yankoff, but hey, at least you're cashing NFL checks. Debo Samuel just 43 scoreless yards in this one. Maybe gets a few more targets with Noah Brown suffering a rib injury, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, shout out to Jalen Lane, had a nice punt return for a touchdown. Meanwhile, over for the Giants, Jackson Dart, 246 yards and a pair of scores through the air. Did throw an interception, but also did chip in 63 rushing yards. Unfortunately, Jackson Dart refuses to really ever to be anything other than a danger child in the open field, and he went and got checked for his 5th concussion since the preseason. So wasn't concussed, came back in, but just please, Jackson, you're so much freaking fun to watch, man. Take a little bit of care of yourself, but I don't know, Dwayne, at this point, maybe he's just memorized the concussion protocol and it's not even going to be a problem regardless. So it was good to see, and I did see with my own 2 eyes at one point, like they ran a kind of inverted veer options, like it looked like they were actually using them back in the design rush game, Dwayne.
Yeah, 13% of the design rushing attempts. He had been, somebody we had been projecting like 16 to 17% most weeks. I projected him at 9% this week because the last game was 0%. So feel comfortable, I'll probably project him around 11% of the design rushing attempts the rest of the way. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, 3 of his carries today were of the design variety.
Even had a 3rd potential touchdown drop by Darius Slayton. Wasn't going to be the easiest catch. Kind of had
that was great tracking.
Shoulder, but
he tracked it so well to get it on his hands, and then he just couldn't quite secure it going to the ground in the end zone.
I'm telling you guys, nothing is harder when you're looking over one shoulder and then you have to kind of adjust mid-flight to try to get it. And he's trying to do it with,
and it came straight over.
His head off. Yeah.
He was this way, and then he had to look back to the middle, like to adjust for it. And, so there's that blind spot where you just lose it. And then it comes in front of you and it's in your hands. It would have been, had he caught that, Jackson Dart would have scored, closer to 30 fantasy points today. He scored 22.1 anyway.
138 unrealized air yards on the day for Darius Slayton. That is a week high. So unfortunate stuff there. Luckily, Wan'Dale Robinson did actually have a better game. 54 yards and a touchdown. Was the wide receiver 15 in PPR points per game when I checked earlier, guys. He really has put together a nice little season at this point. Otherwise, the real big performer, Dwayne, was Tyrone Tracy. 70 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Also caught a touchdown that was like a back shoulder off a wheel, man. Like, this dude really is talented out there. Sure seemed like that he was back to being really the lead back, despite Devin Singletary doing some good things in the last few weeks as well.
Yeah, and coming out of a bye, so almost 25 fantasy points for you today, Ian. 24.7. 65% of the rushing attempts, 76% snap share for Tyrone Tracy, only 24% for Devin Singletary. Now, this was a game where they got down and it was a trailing script, and we have seen Tracy work more as the passing down back, so that could have been one of the drivers. If we end it in a closer game, maybe they do split it up a little bit more between him and Singletary, but there's also a chance they just decided in the bye, why don't we just let this younger player show us what he's got the rest of the way so we know what we need to do in this coming draft. Can we just roll with Tracy and Scadaboo next year, or do we need a third back? So yeah, Tracy looking pretty good, man. So I'm sure we'll have him as a low end running back too. But if he has another game like this, obviously for your final matchup, like I know you guys are like, well, I need information now. I know we all wish we had more information right now, but it's positive for Tyrone Tracy.
I'm not going to hold you to this, Dwayne. It's Sunday evening. We still got to process everything. You're going to get into your projection stuff. But right now, looking at this, Giants versus the Vikings next week, I feel like starting Tyrone Tracy over Ashton Genty.
I can't really argue with it, to be honest. Like, the Raiders' offense is so bad. We'll see if Geno's playing. Not that that's even been great either. But yeah, no, there's going to be a lot of guys we might be ranking over Ashton Genty this week.
Tracy, just given what we didn't know coming back from that injury and Singletary doing his thing, like he was more so again that RB27, RB28 line. So just regardless if he is, completely over Genty or not, going to be more so in that low end RB2 conversation moving forward. So good for him. Also good for Theo Johnson. Caught 3 of 4 targets for 72 yards. He will also continue to be in that top 15 tight end discussion in his own right. Moving along, we had the Bears take down the Browns 31-3. Chicago covering with ease at 7.5 point faves, under cash at 38.5. So this one was 14-0 Bears at halftime, 28-3 by the end of the third quarter. Thanks in large part to Caleb Williams and company, largely instilling their will. 242 yards and a pair of scores from Caleb, one of which was a completely ridiculous throw. Dwain rolling out to his right, finding DJ Moore in the back of the end zone. I feel like every time Caleb starts, doing his Houdini act and making dudes miss in the pocket, unfortunately, he just hasn't quite finished off that pass as dazzling as the entire play was, boy, did he ever this time. So fantastic throw. Some reporter was like, do you really think it was a good idea to try that throw? And he said, I can make any throw, which is an awesome response from Caleb. And come on, guys, put some respect on this young man's name.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get what the reporter's asking. It's into double coverage, like could have easily been picked, but that's a great answer from Caleb. I can make any throw. DJ Moore, man, talk about a boom bust player. Over the last 5 games, here are his fantasy points. 3.1, put him on your bench. 23.4, let's start him. 4.7 points. Let's start him again. We're going to give him one more shot. 0.6. Fine. Back on my bench. 22.9 fantasy points today. So DJ Moore, and it's a game where we had Romo Dunze end up as one of the warm-up scratches guys. So he was actually technically active for the game. Then he injures himself in warm-up, so he doesn't end up playing. We also had Luther Burden leave this game. Before the ankle injury in the third quarter for Luther Burden, and it looked like he might have been on for a career-high route participation rate, which is his first year, guys. So season high, if you will. 75% route participation rate was what he was on pace for whenever he got hurt on the 8th drive of the game. And he had a 33% target share at that point. Burden still gave you 14.4 fantasy points if you guys had to start him today. So we'll just have to keep an eye on the injured ankle, but never good whenever a player has to leave the game and doesn't get to return. Usually I project those players as out to start the next week, and then I need to see them practice and actually ramp up before I add them back to the projections.
Had another one of those just routine catches in the flat, and then all of a sudden that stop ability he has with some full display. That dude has a different level of twitch. Please get healthy soon. Otherwise, shout out to DeAndre Swift, guys. 98 yards and a pair of scores on the ground. The 17-yard touchdown run really was of the very cool variety, if you ask me. So now the RB13 on the season. Again, like Travis Etienne, sometimes, guys, these veteran, boring running backs actually can do a thing or two, particularly when their only competition is a day 3 rookie. Not that Kyle Monunga hasn't had his moments, but unfortunately wasn't to be today. Otherwise, Dwain, Colston Loveland continues to look good out there. Caught 4 or 5 targets for 63 yards. That said, still seem to see a lot of Cole Kmet. Guessing we didn't exactly see Loveland unleashed.
Yep, 66% routes for Loveland today, 50% for Kmet. Like Loveland and Burden, man, like over the last month, like targets per route. So when they're out there, they are the centerpieces to the offense. Burden had a 44% targets per route today. Colston Loveland had a 24%. Although I say that, and Cole Kmet was right there with a 24% as well. But the young guys, it is nice to see, like when they're out there, they are earning their targets now.
Bears against the, unfortunately, Micah Parsons-less Packers next Saturday night. So actually not as bad of a matchup as maybe is seen on paper. We'll see again what happens with some of these wide receiver injuries. Meanwhile, for the Browns, Myles Garrett, 1.5 more sacks, guys. Just 1 sack away from getting that TJ Watt, Michael Strahan record. Very, very fun there because nothing else in this Browns offense is very fun, Dwain. What is fun is Harold Fannon's target share. I will admit that. Also fun to see Isaiah Bond catch a couple bombs downfield. But just, man, Shador's had some great moments. Just wasn't, to be today. Had 3 interceptions on the day. And just, guys, I don't want to go through every single dropback Shador's ever had, but just, we've had quite a few at this point, over 100. And among 44 quarterbacks with at least 100 dropbacks this year, Shador ranks 43rd in EPA per dropback, 43rd in passer rating, and dead last in completion rate. He's made some explosive plays happen, okay? He's 24th in yards per attempt. He's 28th in explosive pass play rate. But again, when a lot of stats are saying you're bad, maybe you are bad. And he's a rookie, only a few starts. We'll see if he gets better. But just for right now, Dwain, it's Harold Fannin, and unfortunately, maybe everyone else, because I don't even know how much we can trust Quinshon Judkins at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Judkins still gets enough work. Here's the thing I'll say about Judkins today. We did not have Dylan Sampson. Jerome Ford went on IR. And we did see an uptick in passing work. So 57% route participation rate, 13% target share. So ultimately, those are things. If we get another game without Dylan Sampson, we're going to look back at the 4.7 fantasy points that Judkins scored today, and it's just going to look like probably an anomaly. I'm not saying he's going to turn around and turn into this 25 point per game guy behind a very banged up offensive line as well, guys. The Browns were down a lot of guys today. They've got some season-ending injuries along their offensive line. So it's not like everything's perfect. Like in my betting, props that I put out this morning, I had Judkins on the under, and everybody's like, what? Judkins on the under? And I'm like, I don't think his rushing attempts can really go up that much, guys. Like he's already had 80% of them. But I did think that his work could go up in the passing game, and it did. He did not hit his prop bet for that, but I think that will help Judkins ultimately, Ian, because that's been the big thing, obviously, other than a bad offense holding him down, if he can get some catches like that. So we'll see what happens with Sampson. But yes, Fannin, obviously the other guy, 45% target share today for the team, 14 targets, 93 air yards. He also had a rushing attempt for 2 yards. So yeah, Harold Fannin, the centerpiece to the passing game for the Browns, whatever that is worth. If you get to play tight end, that actually makes it worth quite a bit. I know, guys, he didn't score, 40 points. It's weird when you have a week with Pitts and some of these other guys and McBride scoring as many fantasy points as they did, but all the underlying stuff is there for Harold Fannin.
And again, it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, obviously, in hindsight, I wish that we would have ranked Kyle Pitts one spot more ahead and would have had a better Harold Fannin. But at the same time, Dwayne, like, if you asked us last Thursday, it was like, hey, Harold Fannin's going to get 14 targets. I think we would have felt just fine ranking him tight end.
Yes. Yeah, we would have. Absolutely. So you should be happy to have a Harold Fannin Jr. or Kyle Pitts on your roster right now. I think, both are good players. So just go with that.
Will be interesting next week, though. They get the Bills, which is great news for Quinshon Judkins. Again, we just saw what Travion did. We've seen what running backs have done them all year, but they have been one of those outlier defenses against tight ends. I tend to think the way the Browns are using Fannin all over the formation, I'm not going to completely dock them for it, but maybe if we do have, again, the closer elite of the elite tight end start sit questions, that could be used against Mr. Fannin. On to the late afternoon slate, we had the Saints beat the Panthers 20-17. New Orleans winning outright as 2.5-point dogs. The under cash at 41.5. Good solid game from Tyler Shuck, got the W, which is all you can ask for our team. That, let's face it, still isn't very good. 272 yards through the air and a touchdown. Also chipped in 32 rushing yards. Gets the Jets next week, Dwayne, which is good news for, again, Chris Olave, who had 85 yards in the score, and also Devon Vele with a very nice 69 yards on 5 receptions. So good stuff from that passing game. Hopefully they can keep that going. The big question here is what to expect out of a rushing attack that we seemingly had figured out with Devin Neal. Unfortunately, he left the game early with a hamstring injury and did not return.
Yeah, so I don't have it split up yet because like we're doing the show earlier and some of the drive stuff is not in here yet. Shout out True Media for having all this awesome information for us. But when you look at Devin Neal, he did go down in the game. And so the number 2 running back was actually Audric Estime with 38% of the snaps, Ian, 14% of the rushing attempts. But Evan Hull was right there close, 30% of the snaps, and he actually had 19% of the carries. So I'll have to dig into it a little bit more and look at it and see what happened once we had Devin Neal out of the game. But just looking at it on the surface, it looks like more of a split backfill with Evan Hull and Audric Estime, with maybe a slightly larger role to Estime, who did get more of the passing down work, 38% routes, and he played 71% of the 2-minute offense versus only 29% for Evan Hull.
Unfortunately, guys, we're not going to have any sort of like just clarification or just confidence level with either Estime or Hull head next week. So I'd have a hard time believing either will be in our top 30. They did try to use Taysom Hill, Dwayne, creatively. I think this might have been the first ever tush push trick play that went absolutely nowhere. Like that's how bad down that Taysom is at this point. They tried doing a little sweep and they were like, are you guys kidding me? It's Taysom Hill, nothing going. So again, we'll see what happens. Hopefully Devin Neal, it's not that serious, but it certainly didn't look good when it happened. Over with those Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young made a couple great throws, man. He was working well outside the pocket, had like a little submarine pitch out there, was doing all the sort of playmaking things that made Bryce Young the number 1 overall pick in the first place. Also threw a lovely 30-yard touchdown down the sideline to my guy, Jalen Coker. So I appreciate that. Unfortunately, though, just when you only throw for 174 yards and you only throw the ball to Tedro McMillan 4 freaking times, man, it's tough to get too excited about this passing game. So still love T-Mac as a long-term talent, but still not going to be someone we can rely on with too much confidence here in Week 16 when they take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The one thing that did seem to stick out, though, Dwayne, was potentially Rico Dowdle having a little bit firmer of a stranglehold on this backfield relative to what we saw before their bye.
Yeah, we did see that today with Rico Dowdle, 64% of the rushing attempts, so 16 carries versus 8 for Chuba Hubbard, so 32% for him. Also 59% snaps versus 43%. So not the Rico Dowdle takeover that we saw for a little small stretch. So Chuba Hubbard is still more involved. And then they split the passing down work, 45% route participation each. Each of them handled 50% of the 2-minute offense. So yeah, little bump up here for Rico Dowdle, 12.4 fantasy points today for him, 4.8 for Chuba Hubbard.
Was good to see Rico return. He got injured very early in that game, scored a touchdown for his trouble. But yeah, guys, again, wasn't able to get too much going otherwise. And Chuba continuing to look good for himself. Had a nice little 9-yard catch where he had basically reverse field out there again. Continues to look far healthier than when he was trying to play through that calf injury. Arguably another game of the day. We had the Rams take down the Lions 41-34. Rams did cover us 5.5-point favorites, over cash at 54.5. So if you started a player from this game, other than Jahmyr Gibbs, sorry about that, we'll get to him in a moment, you probably felt pretty good about it. Puka, 181 yards. Stafford, 368 and 2 scores. Kyron Williams had 2 scores. Blake Corum had a touchdown. Colby Parkinson had 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. They got tackled at the 1-yard line on what could have been a third, trying to do his best Kyle Pitts impression out there. So, Dwayne, the only unfortunate thing here was Davante Adams, unfortunately, had the hamstring injury seemingly happen. I thought it was a back at first when they showed the replay. He's had those problems as well. It was officially diagnosed as a hamstring injury. So still had 71 yards, no touchdowns, unfortunately, before he left. But really, man, it's just this Rams offense is freaking awesome. And get better soon, Davante, because you got a quick turnaround coming up on Thursday against the Seahawks.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on Nakua too. I know he came back in this game, but we've seen Puka do that and then be questionable just because we have the Thursday night game. I wish they had the full.
It was just cramps. I think we're good.
Yeah, so we'll see. Puka's a bit dramatic, so we don't know. Like, he went to get up and he immediately fell down. He's kind of like, I don't want to say he's on LaShawn McCoy level. LaShawn McCoy is like the biggest faker of all time. But Puka, he's pretty dramatic. But hey, look, you're an awesome NFL player, so what do I care? You scored 27.9 fantasy points today. Maybe I'm just bitter because I wanted a few more in my fantasy lineup. But the only other takeaway I have here, backfield, same as usual. Kyron with Corum, like they're in that 55, 40 kind of mode. But it was Colby Parkinson again, over a 70% route participation rate. The second week in a row, he was at 73%. He gave you 24.5 PPR points. So great call out by you, Ian, as a sleeper tight end for this week on the show. 18% target share, 7 targets on the day for Parkinson. And man, getting a little bit of work down the field too. This is not all just check down stuff. Yeah. He had 57 air yards on the day, 8.1 average depth of target. So we could get Tyler Higbee back next week. We don't have official word. Technically, like, he will have served his 4 weeks of being on the short-term IR. So we'll see what happens there. But if we get another game without Higbee at this point, I do think, we'll feel pretty safe about projecting Colby Parkinson closer to a full-time role. The only other funny thing is, man, Terrence Ferguson. And I saw your tweet, like, since the Sean McVay quote about how awesome he is, like he had 0 touches. Man, he had 2 potential huge plays, one of them for a touchdown today, maybe 2 of them for touchdowns today, that one of them he just got overthrown. The other one he couldn't quite pull in. So, like, Terrence Ferguson, I think, is probably going to end up being good at football. It just hasn't happened this year.
Oh, yeah, and it was just funny because McVay's quote was literally like, how dumb does this play call have to be not to get this guy the ball? And it's like, well, Sean, you haven't gotten him the ball, to be fair. But no, and I even heard him talking like pregame about kind of the difference that Ferguson can make in those 3 tight end sets because he has the skill set of a receiver out there. Yep. Really, guys, is someone where, we'll see they're continuing rotating these guys. But if we do get a situation similar to Colson Loveland, Dwayne, where like if Kmet's out of the picture, Loveland to the moon. I think if we ever get to see Terrence Ferguson without Parkinson and Higbee hanging around, it could be a similar, set of circumstances there as well. So we did actually hear Sean McVay say after the game, Adams is unlikely to play Thursday, although, quote, he wouldn't rule him out quite yet. So not looking good there. Is there a wide receiver, Dwayne, from the Tutu Atwells or Jordan Whittingtons of the world who you think really gets a bump up here? Because, tough matchup.
I don't think we can say
3 tight ends.
Yeah, they like using the 3 tight ends, and they're rotating all these guys. So like today, it was Kenota Mumfield. Had a 46% route participation rate. That was the second highest guy behind Puka and Davante Adams. Whittington was at a 10%. Tutu Atwell in his first game back was at a 10%. So I think what would happen in that scenario is Puka's the clear wide receiver 1, and then they're going to rotate these other 3 or 4 guys across 2 positions, and it's just going to be a nightmare. So I think it'll be Puka Nacua, Colby Parkinson if we don't have Tyler Higbee. That's probably all we would trust in the passing game next week. I do have to mention 71% route participation rate for Terrence Ferguson. So not that we would feel confident in starting him next week, but I don't know. Some of you sickos like playing the single game DFS slates and stuff like that. I don't know. Put Terrence Ferguson in the captain and see what happens.
I was about to say, he's probably going to be like chalk because that's how sick all you showdown players are. And I do appreciate that from you guys. But yeah, man, you mentioned a 38-yard walk-in touchdown overthrown, then had one in his hands in the back of the end zone, just couldn't quite survive through the ground. So good up-and-coming player for sure. Meanwhile, with the Lions. Jared Goff, 338 yards and 3 touchdowns. Our one true son got 163 yards and a pair of scores on 18 targets. Not to be outdone, though, Jameson Williams, 135 yards and a touchdown in his own right. It was only Jahmyr Gibbs, Dwayne, who couldn't actually find the end zone and do big things for his Lions offense. I think it's because he can't have physically 2 straight good games in a row. If you look at his game log, it's like 35 points and that's 7, and then it's 25 points and that's 10. But all Drake and joshing around aside, it's unfortunate. It sucks. You guys needed it. Hopefully, you already had the first round bye, but let me be, the 900th person to say I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be fine.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add here. Lions offense was business as usual without Sam Laporta. So, yep, good players. If you've got these Lions, if you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, or you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, you're starting them every week.
Lions next week will be taking on the Steelers again, so certainly wheels up for everyone involved. Moving on, we had the Seahawks take down the Colts 18-16. Indy did cover as 13.5-point faves. Jason Myers had to freaking ruin what would have been an awesome win for Phillip Rivers and company with a game-winning field goal. He actually kicked 6 of them on today. Needless to say, the under did cash in this one. So, yeah, man, Sam Darnold, 271 yards, wasn't horrible out there, but again, no touchdowns against the Colts team as a 2-touchdown favorite. Would have liked to see more from pretty much everyone involved other than Jackson Smith and the Jigba. He has reached that Puka territory, Dwayne, where it's like, JSN's been quiet today. And then you look and he's like, well, 7 catches for 113 yards. So still pretty freaking awesome. Was good to see Rashid Shaheed have 74 yards again. Second, pretty solid game out there. But man, no Elijah Arroyo, AJ Barner, still only 27 scoreless yards. And you know how we've said before, Dwayne, like, oh man, I wish Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker could be one person. They'd be like an RB2 at this point.
Points together.
You know what I'm
6
saying?
Points together today. I don't understand it either. Like if we had like at the beginning of the season, like had like, the ability to see the future and see the record of the Seahawks and just like how well, like they're playing overall, like what their defense looks like
the commitment to the run.
Yeah. Commitment to the run. Even if we thought the guys were splitting, we would think they would both have value. But that hasn't worked out here. The biggest takeaway today was without Arroyo in, they went to a 3 wide receiver set as their base offense instead of using more of the 2 tight end stuff. So like Eric Saubert's their tight end too. He only had a 22% route participation rate today. So AJ Barner was at 84%. And he was out there doing his thing, 18% target share. But that opened the door for Rashid Shaheed, who had an 87% route participation rate. That was second on the team behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. And he tied Cooper Kupp for second on the team with 7 targets, 21% target share. So Shaheed, 12.1 fantasy points today. So if we get another game without Arroyo, Ian, I think that would be a decent bump for Rashid Shaheed in our ranks.
And hey, again, got that quick turnaround coming up Thursday night against the Rams. So maybe we do see another full-time role there for AJ Barner. Otherwise, for the Colts, 120 yards, a short touchdown to Josh Downs, and an interception at the very end of the game. But Phillip Rivers, man, at least proving plenty capable of knowing where to go with the football. I expect this arm to look the way it did, Dwayne. It looked 10% worse than it did 5 years ago. The man cannot throw the ball 20 plus yards downfield. He had Josh Downs open for maybe could have been a 40-yard touchdown. I think I saw Hayden Winks call it like a blimp on Twitter. Like that was what Josh Downs was kind of looking back for. Couldn't find it in the lights or whatever. So it is what it is. This offense is going to be pretty darn bad. But just in terms of how close the game was, man, that was surprising.
Yeah, that was surprising. I mean, they tried to manage the game, but yes, Phillip Rivers did not look good today. It's like you said, he knows where to go with the football. His arm just is not capable of getting there. And so it just really limits the offense. 23% target share to Tyler Warren, 19% to Pittman, 19% to Amir Abdullah, 19% to Josh Downs. So yeah, still spreading it out across all these guys. If you had an offense that was like the first half of the season, like we'd be like, okay, like these guys can all be in play. But in this version of this offense, it's not good news. None of those guys broke 10 fantasy points except for Josh Downs, who had 10.3.
I mean, next week they're going to get an easier test against the 49ers. They're going to have till Monday night to hopefully, get things figured out even more. This was obviously not a good situation at all for Rivers or anyone to be involved with. Still managed to get Jonathan Taylor, 28 touches for 101 yards. So again, whether you want to rank him RB8 or RB15, like the guy's still going to be in your lineup. He's Jonathan Taylor looking at 25 plus touches, but otherwise, Dwayne, Tyler Warren probably remains around that tight end 10, tight end 12. And I don't think we're going to have a single receiver in the top 36.
No, we won't. Nope.
Sad stuff indeed. So great story. Hopefully they can win some games down the road. Moving on, we had the Broncos take down the Packers 34-26. Denver winning outright as 1.5-point home underdogs. The audacity of those odds makers over cash at 42.5. The best game I think I've ever seen from Bo Nix in his career.
Yeah.
All it took was Steven Ruiz from the Ringer to call him out. I love Steven's work. It was just funny how that worked out. But 303 yards and 4 touchdowns. Countless dimes deep to Cortland Sutton down the sideline. And also, man, just some of the off-script playmaking, finding Troy Franklin, big Jordan Humphrey. Dwayne, it's on record. I think you came up with that first. Tony Romo stole your line, pal. You should be taking him to court right now.
Yeah, well, I don't think I would win. I think Tony's got better lawyers than me. So plus I just like Tony Romo. So you know what, Tony, you can have it. But yeah, great game from Bo Nix, dude. 29.1 fantasy points today. You talked about the 4 touchdowns, 8.9 yards per attempt. I mean, and dude, he's just like, it's blowing up early, and I'm like who's catching these touchdowns? Oh, it's little Jordan Humphrey. I forgot who one of the others was. Michael Bandy, was getting the band together, in the back of the end zone. So we did get one to Cortland Sutton later, which was nice. At least someone that you guys probably had, some of you have in your fantasy lineups. So Cortland Sutton came through 24.3 fantasy points today on a 31% target share. So nice to see him getting things going again. The other big piece of news here is it was Troy Franklin back in the wide receiver 2 role. Ian, although 61% routes, it's not like he stepped back into that 80%. They're still rotating stuff a little bit. We did not have Pat Bryant today. He was out with an injury, but Troy Franklin did give you 20.8 fantasy points. He also caught a touchdown, 27% targets per route run today for Troy Franklin. So when he's on the field, man, Bo Nix looks for him. They don't always connect on this stuff, but it has been a much better second season for Troy Franklin. So we'll see what happens next year, though, because his playing time has been decreasing rather than going up. So I'm kind of concerned that while he's played well as far as earning targets and stuff, the team doesn't seem as confident in him.
I think every team needs article in the country is going to have wide receiver as one for the Broncos this offseason. We'll see if Franklin can survive. But again, it doesn't take away some of the good plays he's made. I honestly thought he should have had a second touchdown today. He kind of did the move where he rolled over a defender, but none of his body actually touched the ground. Refs unfortunately blew the whistle, so he didn't get a chance to go ahead and get those 6 or 7 more yards.
My bad. He was actually the wide receiver 3 because I'm looking at this stuff live because it hadn't populated yet whenever we started the show. 75% route participation for little Jordan Humphrey, just because. So he was the wide receiver 2, and Franklin was the wide receiver 3. Sorry.
Unfreaking real. So, hey, touchdowns, Broncos doing their thing. Whatever Sean Payton is, putting in that Kool-Aid certainly is working out just fine. So what do Dwayne and I know? We just like to, again, try to hopefully find people who can score us a bunch of consistent fantasy points. RJ Harvey starting to get there, did have 64 yards and a touchdown. Unfortunately, did hurt his ribs late in the game. So hopefully, again, he's going to be okay. We got the Broncos facing the Jaguars next week, but don't love those rib injuries for running backs, because sometimes their ribs and shoulders can impact how much they're actually fed the ball. Without RJ Harvey, Dwayne, Tyler Beatty, what do you think, man? I don't know.
Dude, I think Jaleel McLaughlin will probably get like 50% of the rushing workload. Beatty gets like 35-40, but gets the passing down work, and they'll probably have somebody they activate off the practice squad.
Hey, more Marvin
and you got
Mims.
The fullback. Or you use Mims more in the backfield. Mims had a rushing attempt today. I don't know how often he lined up in the backfield, but it sucks because Harvey 68% snap share today, 70% design rushing attempts for RJ Harvey today, which would have been that is a season high for him. He had 19 rushing attempts today, 50% route participation rate, 100% of the work inside the 5-yard line. So we'll keep an eye on it. I'm with you. We don't like the rib injuries. We do see some of these backs though, like Achane. He had the rib injury and he's good to go for tomorrow night. We'll see what happens with Harvey.
Marvin Mims did have a season high in snaps in the backfield, 3. So maybe don't go too crazy with it. But again, that is something that he is capable of doing. So again, just fantastic performance from Bo Nix and the Broncos. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Payton just really lets him drop back 40 plus times here again next week against the Jaguars. So we will see what happens there. Otherwise, for those Green Bay Packers, such a gutsy, great performance from Josh Jacobs. Found the end zone twice, 73 yards on the ground, had a nice 35-yard scamper, had a second rushing touchdown nullified by a penalty, and that was of the cool tackle breaking variety as well. That said, we should be happy it was, because he went ahead and made one of the better catches you'll ever see from an RB in the back of the end zone, showing some absolutely strong ass hands out there. So great stuff there, Dwayne. Sure seemed like he was in his usual full-time role, albeit Emmanuel Wilson with the illness also wasn't at 100%.
Yeah, Jacobs shared some of the snaps, 54% snap share today, but he handled 71% of the rushing attempts, which only ended up being 12 carries on the day, just with the way this game went. But he was active enough as a receiver as well. And like to your point, great catch in the end zone, getting both feet down, hanging onto the ball, down to the ground, making an adjustment and everything. So great play by Josh Jacobs, 23.2 fantasy points today.
Now has 31 touchdowns in 31 games with the Packers. Talk about a great day to be great. Unfortunately, Toyotathon Jordan Love came back to earth just a little bit, 277 yards and a touchdown, but 2 interceptions, again, against a great secondary. Unfortunately, though, Dwain, we did lose Christian Watson potentially for a little bit. He hurt his chest shoulder, which sometimes is an indication that it could be a collarbone sort of injury there. So racked up the unrealized air yards. Unfortunately, on the play he was injured on, it was a deep bomb that Patrick Surtain wound up picking off. So just sucks there to see Christian Watson hurt. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Micah Parsons as well with a torn ACL is expected to again miss the rest of the season. So brutal stuff for the Packers as a whole. We'll see what happens with Christian Watson, Dwain. It seems like if he is out, we'd just be back to Dobbs, Reed, and Matthew Golden.
I think Dontavian Wicks would take over more of Watson's role probably. So I don't have a great way to do this because I don't know the exact play that Christian Watson got hurt. So I'm just looking at, he did play some in the third quarter. So I'm just looking at the fourth quarter right now. And it was Romeo Dobbs leading the team with an 80% route participation, followed by Jaden Reed at 73%, and then 67% to Dontavian Wicks. And Matthew Golden was the wide receiver 4 with a 53% route participation rate. Golden did lead the team with a 25% target share. So some rotation of those 4 guys. I think Romeo Dobbs is probably the most locked into a full-time role. It's interesting that Jaden Reed actually finished second in the fourth quarter. But again, small sample, guys. That's only 16 snaps, 11 pass plays.
Apparently, Saban Williams also hurt his foot, so Packers wide receiver room really is down bad at the moment. We'll see how healthy they can get again ahead of next Saturday's matchup against the Bears. Guys, it is now time for our DraftKings closing lines. I teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the best way to get in on the action this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And hey, use your bonus bets on same game parlays, player props, money line spreads, and more, or stay on the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. New customers turn $5 into $200 if your bet wins. Paid out in bonus bets. The crown is yours. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Make this NBA season one to remember. We saved, a perfectly fine game for last week. The 49ers beat the Titans 37-24. San Fran covering thanks to a late field goal as 12.5-point faves. The over cash here at 44.5. Brock Purdy is back, man. I have not seen him this healthy since probably week 1 of the season. 295 yards in a trio of touchdowns through the air. But I think it was the 44 rushing yards and some of the maneuvering he did in the pocket that, again, was so impressive out there. So that's always what made me kind of just balk at anyone that's been like, oh, he's just another Jimmy G or Nick Mullins. Like Jimmy G on his best day ever, man, could not move the way Purdy does. You could say that Purdy, because of his stature, kind of needs to be a little bit more mobile than some of those other guys. But regardless, man, just great stuff from Purdy. Found Kittle for a short touchdown. Found Juwan Jennings for 2 touchdowns and seemed to have his early season rapport back going with Ricky Pearsall, Dwain, who seemed to suffer an ankle injury on like his first catch of the game, but was back out there and doing his thing. Also got a Christian McCaffrey touchdown. I mean, again, guys, on our show sheet, I have like top performers, and then I have a category for busts. There's no busts, man. Everyone in the 49ers balled out today. This is what this offense is capable of when they're clicking.
Yeah, we saw Brock Purdy give you 26 fantasy points today, guys. We had talked about him being really a low-end QB1 this week and an upgrade and kind of a funnel matchup, which is what we really saw happen here. George Kittle led the way with a 32% target share. Ian, he had 9 targets today, 89% route participation. He gave you 22.8 fantasy points. Then you had Juwan Jennings giving you 18.7 fantasy points. He had an 87% route participation, was third on the team today with an 18% target share behind Ricky Pearsall, who had a 25% target share. Pearsall dealing with the ankle injury obviously cost him a little bit of playing time today. He only had a 65% route participation rate. So we'll see what happens on the injury report, but it is good that he was at least able to get back into the game. Kendrick Bourne is the guy that stepped in and saw some more work with Pearsall kind of in and out of the lineup. Demarcus Robinson, a little bit more work as well. So we'll see what happens. CMC is CMC. Nobody needs me to say anything on that, I don't think.
Well, did he have the full-time role coming off the back?
Who? Pearsall?
No, CMC.
Oh, CMC, yeah, he did. Well, he's in the role that he's been in for like the last 3 to 4 weeks, where he's sharing a little bit more of the workload with Brian Robinson, not getting 80% of the rushing attempts anymore, but still getting most of the work, and 92% route participation rate, 67% of the rushing attempts.
I was so mad, Dwayne. I'm at the gym on Saturday and I got a little core routine I do where I basically like rotate from my back to like a side plank to a regular plank. I'm on a side plank. I have 13 more seconds before I rotate. I see on my screen Christian McCaffrey is now questionable with a back injury. 13 seconds. Come on, don't quit, Ian. Just 13 seconds. Now go ahead and make the move. I missed getting CMC in my home league because one of my freaking stupid friends somehow got to him in the 13 seconds that I freaking waited to get it. And the lesson, everyone, is that nothing comes before fantasy football in life unless you want to be a loser. So good stuff by the 49ers. They'll take on the Colts next Monday night. Dwayne, Tennessee Titans, Jeffrey Simmons caught a touchdown. Tony Pollard is staying hot, 104 yards and a touchdown. Titans get the Chiefs next week. I saw Chris Jones get a little bit banged up. Are we seeing Pollard distance himself from Tajay Spears just when everyone needs him in their consolation bracket?
Yeah, I mean, well, really, it's been the last 5 to 6 games as far as the rushing attempts all go through Pollard. He had 70% today, 18.2 fantasy points. Still going to be really hard to trust. I don't think he'll be anything more than a low-end running back too, but if you have to use him, at least you know that he is running a little bit more hot right now, and maybe you end up with 15 to 20 fantasy points.
Hey, a couple weeks ago, man, I was putting him behind like the RB2s on not great teams. So he certainly is at least moving
Yeah.
up in the world over there. Otherwise, Cam Ward continuing to, again, flash that arm talent here or there. Did miss Van Jefferson for what could have been like a 40-yard touchdown. And then Van Jefferson made a nice like 45-yard catch down the middle. So wanted to give Van some love because we've, used him as the butt of the joke a few times here on the Fantasy Live show. But he certainly achieved more than Dwayne and I ever freaking will. So we also got to keep that in mind. So good stuff from Van. Chamari DK couldn't get much going because, again, I had the audacity to believe a wide receiver on the Titans could actually be a decent wide receiver 4. That was wrong. Gunnar Helm had a touchdown. Anything else for the Titans, Dwayne?
You're probably just early. Jamiri DK will probably be a good wide receiver next week. You know how this small sample stuff goes. No, nothing else to add. Pretty much the same rotation that we've seen with the wide receiver room. It was Io Manor with a slight lead in routes, DK second, and it was Van Jefferson third. Chigo Okonkwo and Gunnar Helm still splitting the work slightly to Okonkwo. But yeah, nothing to write home about here. Like, just avoid this passing attack if you can.
And with that, Dwayne, that's going to do it for the Fantasy Life Show Sunday Night Recap Edition. Dwayne will be in the lab getting you guys the critically acclaimed utilization report, usually sometime Monday later afternoon. I'll also have those Week 16 ranks ready before you can say Week 16 ranks. Maybe say it a couple times and do me a favor, but rest assured, soon enough, they will be up on fantasylife.com as well. So otherwise, again, hope your playoff matchups went well, and we got 2 more to win, everyone. So for Dwayne, for producer Mick, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.